He never believed in love. She never believed in rules. Two people on opposite ends of life's spectrum about to collide in a story that would change them both forever. Nathan Blake, billionaire CEO of Blake Enterprises, sat at the head of a sleek boardroom. Towering glass walls surrounded him, catching the morning sun and slicing beams of light across the polished table. His presence was magnetic, sharp jawline, meticulously tailored navy suit, and those piercing gray eyes that had intimidated rivals and allies alike. Nathan thrived in this environment. His life was one of precision control and above all power. Around him, the company's top executives waited breathlessly as he concluded another flawless presentation on corporate expansion. This is how Blake Enterprises will dominate the next fiscal year, he said, coolly clicking to the final slide. A polite smattering of applause followed. No one dared speak unless invited. Nathan's reputation for brilliance and ruthlessness was well known. Personal relationships were dispensable. Emotions were distractions. Nathan Blake's existence was a series of transactions, each calculated for maximum return. But fate often intrudes when we least expect it. Just as the meeting was about to adjourn, the heavy double doors of the boardroom burst open. The sharp click of a cane echoed through the room as Gerald Blake, Nathan's father and the company's formidable founder, strode in. Though older Gerald's presence was no less commanding, his sharp gaze swept across the room, settling on his son with a mixture of expectation and simmering frustration. A hush fell. Even the most seasoned executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nathan's jaw tightened. Maintaining his composure, he said evenly, "We're in the middle of a meeting, Father." Gerald dismissed the room with a wave of his cane. "This cannot wait." Without waiting for further reply, Gerald turned and walked out, cane clicking against the marble floor. The room remained frozen. After a beat, Nathan exhaled slowly, standing with deliberate calm. Meeting adjourned, he said curtly, his voice a blade cutting through the silence. The boardroom watched as Nathan followed his father into a private adjoining office. The moment the door clicked shut, Nathan's icy mask cracked, revealing a flicker of irritation. "What is it now?" he asked, his tone low and sharp. Gerald faced his son leaning on his cane. "It's time you stop playing games, Nathan. You're nearly 35. It's time to settle down." Nathan scoffed. "You interrupted a multi-million-dollar meeting to lecture me about marriage." Gerald's voice snapped back iron beneath the calm. "This isn't a lecture. It's an ultimatum." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me. If you don't get married within the next 3 months," Gerald said, voice like steel, "you can forget about inheriting anything from Blake Enterprises." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Nathan stared at his father, disbelief warring with rising anger. "You're threatening to disinherit me because I refuse to play house." Gerald leaned in voice, dangerously calm. "Our investors are watching. They want stability, a family man to lead this company into the future. You may be brilliant in the boardroom, but that won't mean a damn thing if they don't trust you outside of it." Nathan's fists clenched at his sides. The idea of being forced into a marriage for appearances made his blood boil. He didn't believe in love. It was a weakness, a distraction from the empire he had built. But he knew his father would not back down. After a long, tense silence, Nathan straightened his calm mask, slipping back into place. "Fine," he said coolly. "If you want a wedding, I'll give you one." Gerald's eyes gleamed with triumph. But Nathan wasn't finished. A slow smile curved his lips, one that masked simmering defiance. "I'll find the perfect bride," he added. And I'll make sure it's a wedding you won't forget. In the world of corporate leadership, personal image matters more than many CEOs would care to admit. Investors, partners, and clients often equate stability at home with reliability in business. This is not mere fiction. Consider real-world examples. Jeff Bezos' divorce briefly shook Amazon stock. Elon Musk's personal life often draws media scrutiny that bleeds into public perception of his ventures. Gerald Blake's demand, while harsh, reflects an uncomfortable truth. In high-profile positions, personal choices are often judged as proxies for professional competence. Nathan, who had spent his entire life mastering the art of calculated detachment, was now being forced to navigate the one arena he had always avoided: emotional entanglement. Little did he know this decision, born of strategy and defiance, would unravel the very fabric of the world he'd so carefully built. Weeks later, Nathan found himself standing amid the glittering opulence of a charity gala, a setting he typically avoided unless it served a strategic purpose. But tonight he was on a mission. He needed a wife, not someone eager for his fortune or desperate for status, but someone who would agree to a business arrangement, no strings attached. Scanning the room, Nathan's gaze moved past clusters of well-dressed women vying for attention. Then she caught his eye. Across the crowded ballroom near the back stood Arya Collins. Her wild auburn curls cascaded freely over her shoulders. A glass of champagne rested in her hand as she rolled her eyes at the pomp and circumstance surrounding her. Unlike the other women dressed to impress and competing for a billionaire's glance, Arya radiated effortless confidence. She wore a simple blue dress, minimal makeup, relaxed posture. She seemed completely uninterested in the wealth and power swirling around her. Nathan watched as she turned to her friend, muttering something sarcastic that made them both laugh. There was no pretense, no calculated charm. She was genuine and utterly disinterested in the world he represented. Perfect. Nathan approached with the same purposeful confidence he brought to every business negotiation. "Nathan Blake," he said smoothly, extending a hand. Arya glanced at his outstretched hand, raised an eyebrow, and shook it briefly. "Arya Collins," she replied, polite but indifferent. Intriguing. She wasn't impressed. That only piqued his interest further. "I don't think I've seen you at one of these events before," Nathan continued unfazed. "That's because I don't usually waste my time at pretentious fundraisers," Arya shot back, eyes glinting with mischief. "But my friend dragged me here. The free champagne isn't bad." Nathan chuckled, genuinely amused, a rare occurrence. "Not a fan of the wealthy elite." "Not particularly," Arya replied, taking another sip. "You all seem to think money can buy anything." "Can it?" Nathan asked, curiosity sharpening his gaze. "Not me." Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Arya's words echoed in Nathan's mind. She was exactly what he needed: someone unimpressed by wealth, unlikely to complicate matters with emotion. Have you ever had a moment where pretending led to something unexpectedly real? Please comment below and like this video if you believe the best love stories start with honesty. Subscribe our channel now for more powerful story-based videos every day. The next day they met again. Nathan had arranged a private meeting at a small cafe far removed from the corporate world. Arya arrived late, her hair windswept, sliding into the seat across from him with a skeptical look. "So," she said, arms crossed. "Why did you want to meet Nathan?" "Didn't waste time. I need a wife." Arya blinked, then laughed out loud. "You're joking." Her laughter faded as she saw the steady look in his eyes. "You're serious?" "Yes," Nathan replied calmly. "It's a business arrangement, 1 year. No feelings involved?" You'll have everything you need financially. After a year, we'll go our separate ways." Arya stared at him, stunned. "You think I'd marry you for money?" I think Nathan replied evenly. "You could use the money for something important. I did my research. That art gallery you love, it's struggling." Arya's eyes flashed with anger, but Nathan caught the flicker of hesitation beneath it. He had struck a nerve. "You'd have complete independence," he continued. "No obligations, no expectations, just appearances." For days, Arya wrestled with the idea. She hated the thought of being part of some rich man's charade. But the truth was undeniable. Her beloved gallery was on the brink of bankruptcy. This was a lifeline she couldn't ignore. Finally, after many sleepless nights, she returned to Nathan Jaw, set in stubborn resolve. 1 year, she said firmly, not a day longer. Nathan nodded, sealing the deal with the same cold efficiency he brought to every business transaction. Neither of them realized this would be the one deal that changed everything. Arranged marriages or contractual relationships are no stranger to fiction, but they also reflect an undercurrent of real-life dynamics, especially in circles of extreme wealth. Consider the phenomenon of strategic marriages among political families or business dynasties. In such contexts, marriage isn't just about romance, it's about alliance perception and power consolidation. But what makes this story compelling is Arya's agency. She doesn't enter the arrangement out of naivety or desperation. She makes an informed choice, a reflection of the difficult compromises many face in the real world when passion and pragmatism collide. This nuanced dynamic sets the stage for a relationship far more complex and authentic than either Nathan or Arya anticipates. The grand hall of the Blake estate shimmered beneath cascading white roses and crystal chandeliers. Hundreds of guests filled the space, cameras flashing as the media dubbed it the wedding of the year. For the outside world, it was a spectacle, wealth, power, prestige on full display. But for Arya Collins, it felt like walking into a carefully gilded cage. Standing at the altar beside Nathan, her hand resting lightly on his arm, Arya's heartbeat remained steady, not from nerves but from sheer disbelief at the surreal scene unfolding. She wore a designer gown, her fiery auburn hair styled in soft waves. Yet inside she felt like an imposter in someone else's life. She stole a glance at Nathan. His expression was unreadable, gray eyes fixed ahead, face carved in stone. To him, this was no more than a calculated move, another boardroom negotiation with more expensive decor. "Remember the terms," Arya reminded herself, jaw tightening. 1 year, nothing more. The vows were exchanged. Rings slid onto fingers with mechanical precision. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Nathan leaned down, brushing a polite practice kiss against Arya's cheek. Cameras flashed. Applause erupted. Inside, Arya felt only the suffocating weight of the contract they had just sealed. The days that followed were no less disorienting. Arya moved into Nathan's penthouse, a sprawling space of glass and steel towering over the city skyline. It was pristine, cold, a reflection of its owner. No photos, no mementos, just expensive furniture and the faint scent of leather and cologne. Nathan had been clear from the start: separate bedrooms, separate lives. They would appear together at public events, playing the part of the perfect couple. But behind closed doors, they were strangers bound by contract. Arya had expected the arrangement to be simple. She had no intention of falling for a man like Nathan, arrogant, emotionally detached, obsessed with control. But reality proved more complicated. Over time, small moments began to chip away at their carefully constructed distance. Nathan's world was one of rigid routines, early mornings at the gym, followed by back-to-back meetings. Arya's, by contrast, was one of creative chaos. Paint-splattered shirts, erratic hours, bursts of inspiration at 3 a.m. Their worlds collided in subtle ways. One night Arya returned from her gallery late exhausted and dropped her shoes near the door. Nathan, meticulously organized, glanced up. "You know," he said dryly, loosening his tie, "this isn't a college dorm." Arya didn't even glance up. "And you know," she shot back, "this isn't a corporate office. Maybe you should try living in it." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He told himself it didn't matter. She could be as difficult as she wanted as long as she upheld her part of the deal. But the more she challenged him, the harder it became to ignore the fire in her eyes, the way her presence disrupted the sterile monotony of his life. This phase of the story beautifully mirrors the tension found in many real-life marriages of convenience or even corporate partnerships where personal and professional boundaries blur. Think of high-profile business mergers where two vastly different cultures must coexist. The structured, numbers-driven world of Nathan clashes head-on with Arya's free-spirited, emotionally rich approach to life. This dynamic tension drives growth, but only if both sides are willing to adapt. Many fail because they try to dominate or retreat. Here we see both characters slowly being forced out of their comfort zones, a powerful metaphor for any transformative relationship. The tension between them simmered with every passing day. Their interactions, once perfunctory, had become charged. It was no longer easy to ignore the growing awareness between them. And then one evening, the boundaries truly began to blur. Nathan returned late from a grueling day of meetings to find Arya curled on the couch, her skin pale, sweat beading on her brow. For a moment he stood frozen, the image jarring. Arya, so fiery, so independent, now looked fragile, her defenses stripped away by illness. Without a word, he crossed the room. "Arya," he asked, voice lower than usual. She blinked up at him, exhaustion clouding her gaze. "Didn't think you'd care," she whispered hoarsely. Her words stung more than he expected. Without responding, Nathan scooped her gently into his arms. Arya, too weak to resist, allowed herself to lean against him. He carried her to her bedroom, carefully tucking her under the covers. The next hours revealed a side of Nathan even he hadn't known existed. He stayed by her side, ensuring she stayed hydrated. He checked her temperature, called the family doctor, paced anxiously while waiting for updates. Throughout the night, he watched over her, sleepless but unwavering. In the quiet hours before dawn, as Arya drifted in and out of sleep, Nathan found himself watching her, not the woman from the contract, not the reluctant partner, but the person beneath it all. The vulnerability in her features stirred something he hadn't allowed himself to feel. When morning came, Arya's stirred voice still raspy. You stayed. Nathan, sitting by her bedside, glanced over his shoulder. A rare, almost smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "It's not as easy as it looks." Arya chuckled faintly, attempting to sit up. Their hands brushed, and for a fleeting moment, neither of them pulled away. "Thank for last night," she said quietly, eyes meeting his. "You're welcome," Nathan replied softly. It wasn't much, but it was enough to shift the dynamic between them. Moments of vulnerability often act as catalysts in relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or professional. In real-life leadership circles, I've seen executives who transform team dynamics by showing genuine concern during a crisis, an unexpected illness, a family emergency. These moments humanize even the most formidable figures. Here, Nathan's care for Arya marks a turning point, not in grand declarations, but in quiet actions. It's a reminder that true connection often begins when we're willing to show up, not just when it's convenient, but when it's needed most. Grand historic architecture rose before them, a testament to generations of Blake wealth and power. Nathan had never cared for the annual Blake family retreat. It was a theater of appearances, a place where alliances were forged and reputations polished beneath a veneer of familial warmth. This year, however, carried a new complication, Arya. Their marriage was legally binding, yes, but in private still a performance. The retreat meant more public scrutiny, more eyes analyzing every glance, every interaction. Arya, sensing Nathan's tension as they arrived, squeezed his arm lightly. "Relax," she whispered. "We've been fooling everyone so far." Nathan offered a rare, crooked smile. "It's not them I'm worried about." The estate buzzed with life laughter, clinking glasses, whispered conversations. Nathan watched Arya move through the room with effortless grace. Her sharp wit and easy charm disarmed even his most judgmental relatives. She wore a simple, elegant dress that accentuated her figure just enough to make Nathan's pulse quicken, though he shoved the thought aside. This is just part of the act, he reminded himself. And yet the more he watched her, the harder it became to believe that. Later that night, after the last toast had been made and the guests dispersed, Nathan closed the door behind them in their private room. Jaw tight, he leaned against the door. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too charged. "For months we've danced around each other," he said softly. "But here now, no one's watching." Arya's breath hitched. She met his gaze, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. The tension between them crackled like static. Nathan took a step forward, eyes darkening. Arya stepped back, her voice shaking. "I can't do this, Nathan. I thought we were building something real, but maybe I was just fooling myself." Nathan's voice cracked, raw, unguarded. "Arya, I love you." The words hung heavy in the air. Arya's shoulders sagged as if his confession only made it harder to walk away. But she did. Turning quickly, she disappeared down the hall. Nathan stood frozen, the hollow echo of her absence ringing louder than any boardroom silence he'd ever faced. In many narratives and in life retreat settings like this, serve as crucibles for relationships. Away from the noise of daily routines without the buffers of public life, people are forced to confront the truth of their feelings. Retreats strip away pretense. They compress time and heighten emotional dynamics. This is why many corporate leadership off-sites, family gatherings, or even couple getaways can become unexpected turning points in relationships. For Nathan, this weekend revealed a truth he could no longer bury. Arya mattered. Not as a business partner, not as a contractual figurehead, but as the woman who had quietly dismantled his emotional walls. The city skyline glittered beneath the evening lights, but inside Nathan's penthouse, the air was thick with tension. Nathan sat alone, shoulders hunched, a stark contrast to the man who once commanded boardrooms with unshakable confidence. Before him lay a stack of damning evidence emails, financial transactions records, all pointing to one culprit, Victor Lang. A rival CEO and former business associate, Victor had orchestrated the leak that exposed Nathan and Arya's contract marriage to the world. The fallout had been swift and brutal. Headlines screamed betrayal. Commentators speculated. Arya was painted as a gold digger. Nathan, a cold-hearted businessman exploiting a vulnerable woman. And worst of all, Arya had left. Gone from her gallery, from their home. Vanished. For the first time in his life, Nathan Blake felt powerless. Hiring private investigators had uncovered the truth, but it no longer felt like a victory. I built my life around the wrong things, he thought bitterly. Power, success, control. None of it means anything without her. Determined, he called a press conference not to salvage his business, but to face the world with unflinching honesty. The room buzzed with reporters, cameras flashed, microphones waited. Nathan stepped to the podium. Gone was the corporate mask. His face was softer, weary, but resolute. "I'm not here to discuss business today," he began. His voice was steady but carried an unusual warmth. "I'm here to set the record straight." The room fell silent. "There's been a lot of talk about my marriage to Arya Collins," he continued, gray eyes scanning the crowd. "Yes, it began as a contract, but Arya, she never deserved the scrutiny." He swallowed hard. "Arya is the most genuine, passionate, courageous person I've ever met. She didn't marry me for money or status. She married me because, despite everything she believed, there was more to me than the cold exterior I showed the world." A pause. The next words came in a near whisper. "And I love her, not because of what she's done for me, but because of who she is." He stepped down from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions that followed. Somewhere across the city, Arya watched the broadcast, tears welling in her eyes. She remembered the small moments. How Nathan brought her favorite coffee without asking. How he stayed up with her when she was sick. How he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. Those moments hadn't been part of any contract. They had been real, and so were her feelings. Public vulnerability is one of the most powerful and terrifying acts a leader can undertake. In this moment, Nathan does what few in his position would dare. He places personal truth above corporate image. Real-life examples abound. Consider Howard Schultz speaking openly about his upbringing in a Brooklyn housing project during Starbucks shareholder meetings, or Melinda French Gates discussing her emotional journey during public philanthropy work. Such acts of authenticity break down walls between leader and audience, between persona and person. They forge trust through shared humanity. Here, Nathan's confession does more than shift public opinion. It opens the final door between him and Arya. The words from the press conference echoed in Arya's mind. She had watched the broadcast alone, tears streaming down her face. The man she thought incapable of love had stood before the world and bared his heart, not as a CEO, not as a cold strategist, but as a man stripped of every facade. "I thought you betrayed me," she thought, "but I was wrong." Driven by a force stronger than doubt, Arya raced through the city to Nathan's penthouse. The elevator ride seemed endless. Her heart pounded with every passing floor. Finally, the doors opened. Nathan stood by the window, silhouetted against the glittering skyline, lost in thought. Hearing the soft chime of the elevator, he turned, breath-catching, as he saw her. Neither spoke at first. Then Arya broke the silence, her voice trembling. "I saw the press conference." Nathan's throat tightened. "Arya." She shook her head, stepping closer. "Let me talk." Her eyes searched his face. "I thought you betrayed me. I thought everything we had was just pretend. But I was wrong. I've been wrong about so many things." Nathan stood frozen, hope flickering, but fragile. "I don't care about the contract anymore," Arya continued, voice gaining strength. "I care about you, about us." Before she could say more, Nathan crossed the distance between them. His hands framed her face, tentative, trembling. Their lips met not with practiced poise, but with raw honesty. When they finally broke apart, foreheads resting together, breaths mingling, Nathan whispered, "No more contracts. Just us." Arya smiled through tears. Just us. In that moment, the walls they had both so carefully maintained crumbled. Theirs was no longer a marriage of convenience nor a business arrangement. It was love, fierce, fragile, and real. Reconciliation scenes like this resonate deeply because they mirror moments we all experience, where vulnerability must overcome pride and love must bridge misunderstanding. In real-life relationships, whether personal or professional, the ability to admit fault, to forgive, and to choose connection again is a marker of emotional maturity. Public gestures like Nathan's confession open the door. But true healing happens in private, in those quiet, trembling moments where words carry the weight of the heart. Arya's choice to return and Nathan's willingness to meet her with open honesty exemplify the courage required to rebuild trust. Months passed. The once sterile penthouse had transformed. Where cold steel and glass had dominated, now warmth reigned. Arya's vibrant art adorned the walls, splashes of color breathing life into every room. Laughter echoed through the space. The faint scent of fresh coffee blended with the aromas of paint and canvas. Nathan Blake's world had shifted not in public headlines, but in private truths. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Nathan wrapped his arms around Arya from behind. His chin rested gently on her shoulder. "Remember when this was all just pretend?" He whispered, a teasing smile in his voice. Arya laughed softly, leaning into him. "I think it was real long before we admitted it." Nathan pressed a kiss to her temple. For a man who once measured success in market share and stock price, this was now his greatest treasure. Arya's gallery had flourished. No longer just a lifeline, it had become a thriving hub for local artists. Nathan supported her every step of the way, often attending exhibitions and discovering joy in a world once foreign to him. Their relationship had evolved into a true partnership, one built on trust, respect, and daily choice. Of course, life still brought challenges, but they faced them together, fortified by the lessons they had learned. One quiet evening, Nathan reflected aloud. "If someone had told me a contract would lead me here, I'd have laughed." Arya smiled, squeezing his hand. "Sometimes life's best surprises start with the things we resist most." This final transformation echoes a profound truth seen in both relationships and leadership. When we release control, when we embrace authenticity, we create space for connection to flourish. Nathan's journey from isolation to intimacy reflects the arc many experience when shifting from transactional to transformational living. Real-world leaders who embrace vulnerability, like Indra Nooyi, Bill Gates, or Howard Schultz, often find their greatest impact stems not from power, but from presence. In our own lives, the same principle holds true. As their story closes, we're reminded true love isn't about perfection or grand gestures. It's about the quiet moments, the small acts of care, the courage to be vulnerable with someone who sees the real you. And sometimes love finds us in the most unexpected places, even in the middle of a contract. Nathan and Arya's journey teaches us that the heart wants what it wants, no matter how carefully we try to control it. So as you move through your own story, whether in love, friendship, or leadership, remember, let go of the script. Embrace the unexpected. And above all, choose connection, Because at the end of the day, it's not about how the story begins, it's about how you write the chapters together. Thanks for staying with us until the end. If this story moved you, made you think, consider sharing it with someone who might need it today. Subscribe our channel for more powerful stories about love, self-growth, and human connection, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next emotional journey.